Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Mandeville, NEA Rhode Island Communications Director, and today is Thursday, October 29th, and this is episode 26 of Ask Larry and Bob, and I am joined, as I am each week, by NEARI President Larry Purtill and NEARI Executive Director Bob Walsh. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Steph.
Hi, Bob.
So this is the second time we're meeting this week. We're doing a bit of a double dip because of the election coming up next week, and because obviously COVID numbers are increasing, and we wanted to ensure that we were able to respond to the press conference that was yesterday that the governor held. So really the first thing I want to do is ask both of you your thoughts on what was brought to us in the press conference.
Well, I will go first. It's very frustrating because the numbers are one thing. We know COVID's on the rise. We have seen the breakouts. It's certainly on the rise among people in their 30s and 40s. But we also know that there are a lot of our schools and our school districts where a lot of students are being quarantined, a lot of staff are being quarantined, where some days they don't have enough staff in the building, they can't find enough substitutes. Teachers are doing double duty, whether they're teaching in person and trying to do it virtually at the same time. They have students out they're trying to work with, they're trying to cover classes. So it's very difficult to get a handle on what's actually going on. And we know with numbers rising, we see it not only in Rhode Island, around the country, around the world. A lot of Europe's now locked down or locking down. I think after next Tuesday, after the election, states are going to have to get tougher on some people not wearing masks, on distance learning, et cetera. So getting back to education and what's going on in our schools is difficult to get a handle on, but we know the schools are struggling. So this might be a time to take a little pause. We know we're headed toward distance learning at some point in the near future. Why not do it now, take a pause, get people out of quarantine. People have COVID, get them back, healthy and back into school settings, and reboot ourselves. And then we can take care of students who really need in person and need more. Because there are a lot of concerns around mental health and abuse and everything else, but we can address those without, exposing students and staff to more COVID.
Bob?
Yeah, the debate of whether we should have opened schools at all in September is over. And the original goal of making that decision has been largely accomplished. Every teacher and support professional has had the opportunity to meet their students. So with that accomplished, we are where we were, or getting close to where we were in March, where the decision was made to go to full distance learning. I don't say that with any joy. I realize the difficulties that it's going to impose on working parents, on our own members, on the kids, on the economy, and everything else. But given the range of lousy choices that we are confronting, I think it is inevitable that we will be returning to full distance learning sooner rather than later. The Department of Health, where we represent 280 members, is overwhelmed with the burden of contact tracing. The governor correctly points out part of the problem is the number of contacts that we all as Rhode Islanders have increased because we have COVID fatigue, and rightfully so. Part of it, people have been lax in their own personal contact tracing. We have been to the supermarkets and seen people not following the arrows on the floor or understanding a mask is supposed to cover both a nose and a mouth and everything else. And it is a false excuse to say that students are not a large reservoir of transmission of coronavirus. And that may well be true, but adults are. And teachers and education support professionals do not live in a magic box at the school to be summoned when class starts and to go back in the box when it ends. They live in the greater Rhode Island community that is now suffering the largest surge we have seen since coronavirus started. And therefore, with the quarantine rules, which are sensible, seem harsh, 10 days plus 14 days, depending on the circumstance, more and more of our members are not available to be there for their students in person anyway. That's putting an increasing burden on those that are. It's causing them to break the rules originally laid down about contact. So the remaining professionals in the building are seeing more students than recommended. And probably tomorrow, the governor will announce a reduction, a phase 2-like situation where if you're allowed to be with 15 people, it's going to be reduced to 10 and so on and so forth. And the folks that work in the schools, students and teachers and education support professionals are like our people too, and should be counting against those totals. So no joy in saying it. We had a good run where folks did have the opportunity to meet their students. And as Larry said, it's time for a pause. And our folks are divided. And we said this in the episode we did earlier this week. For the subset of folks who use anonymous accounts to attack us online saying, you should have shut down the schools. We don't make that decision. And many of your colleagues don't agree with you if indeed you are a member, hiding behind an anonymous name. And everyone's entitled to their own opinion on that. But we go where the numbers lead us, and we know where the numbers are leading us in this direction. And again, no joy in that. We'd rather have this over and done with, but it's going to be a difficult rest of the fall and winter, and hopefully we can get back. But they cannot continue to use the other excuses. Yes, there are students who need to be fed, and we need to figure out how to do that. There are students who are in horrible home situations that finally they're acknowledging the teachers and ed support professionals were often the first reporters when they saw a child in distress. We know who they are. We know what those houses are, and we're going to need more help from the appropriate agencies to visit those students at home. Keeping the schools open on a widespread basis for those particular issues that can be resolved through existing programs is not a rationale to do it. So please stop saying that. And it's certainly not a rationale. It's good for the economy. We are not unaware of an uptick in cases among folks who are parents who, because the kids are in school, are out and about and having increased contacts, and therefore are getting increased number of COVID cases. So you push the balloon down in one place, it pops up on the other. That's where we are.
So yesterday, the governor talked about we are on the path of potentially moving back a phase. So moving back a phase would take us to the one that was in the summer. So, you know, in poking around and looking to see what that means for public education, there's nothing there because it was summer. So there's no school mentioned. So that's going to need to be addressed. Also, I'm going to put up a graphic for, let's see if we can do this. These were the 5 metrics that were used to reopen schools safely starting in August. So I'm taking you back to that. We can run right through these metrics and match them up against what's happening now. So the first one is the Rhode Island Department of Health is tracking statewide data to ensure we're continuing to see the right public health trends. Well, we are trending in the wrong direction, clearly.
Well, yes.
All right, we're distance learning and doing this in the same room is challenging.
The system can work.
Yes. So
yes,
we are trending in the wrong way. So number 1, we're already not meeting that metric. Number 2, Department of Health is also tracking municipal readiness to ensure the incidence rates within our cities and towns are not above a certain level. Well, we said goodbye to the 100 per 100,000 threshold a long time ago. And there's a growing list of municipalities that are creeping up to that 4 and 5% threshold as well. Number 3, having the ability to test all symptomatic staff and students and getting those test results back in an average of 48 to 72 hours. Larry, you want to comment on that number 3?
Yeah, it's just not happening. And again, it's not, there's no one to blame for this. The system's just overwhelmed. The governor was calling for more people to come in for the next 6 months to be able to contact trace and stuff. But we know there are cases where our members have tried and families have tried and haven't been contacted by the Department of Health for 2 to 3 days about contact tracing. And obviously, even if you go with the fact that once you're exposed, you're not contagious for 24 hours, it's well beyond the 24-hour period. Then they're tested. Some are getting them back rapidly. Some are having to wait a few days. So it's more than 72 hours in many cases. The other thing is now Department of Health is telling some school districts to just go ahead and quarantine who they think they need to because they can't keep up. And that makes it difficult for school districts because they're certainly not experts on contact tracing. And they're going to, out of our abundance of caution, which we would advise, going to quarantine a lot of people, thus becoming the problems. You have a lot of staff being quarantined and you can't find substitutes. So number 3 is problematic.
You've also got, I've heard anecdotally, a few cases where folks have been on the phone so long, 45 minutes waiting on the K-12 line, that they give up, call their primary to get a test through that channel, and then they're not recorded in through the portal. So yeah, there's definitely issues with that. There have been issues with that. The hundreds of cases that are in the backlog, it's problematic. So number 3. Number 4, every school has more than sufficient cleaning supplies, soap and hand sanitizer for every student and staff member. I don't have an answer for this. I don't know what school districts have. Do either of you have
our folks are working incredibly hard, but it's a volume problem. Being asked, in some instances, the concept of cleaning the classroom between classes when students are moving, which they're not really supposed to be doing, is still problematic. I don't think this is the standalone problematic issues, but there are sporadic reports of problems. And at the bigger level, it's not officially mentioned on the list. The air filtration and everything else is still an issue. And today, as we're filming today, it's a very cold day, relatively speaking, and the wide open windows on a cold day, we're getting some reports. It's a little chilly out there. And while brave souls like Stephanie and Larry can deal with that 55-degree classroom weather, folks like myself, even when they put on a sweater, would think sitting there for 6 hours when it's in the 50s is not something you want to subject kids to. And that's in a day when it's in the 40s. When it starts to get down to the 20s and 30s outside, we've got a problem.
Indeed. So number 5 is, so 4 is obviously up in the air because we don't really know about the cleaning supplies. But number 5, we're looking at the operational readiness of our schools, including transportation, processes to screen everyone who enters our schools, and a detailed response protocol in case someone is ill. I'll stop sharing. So operational readiness, you can put a lot in that bucket. Educational effectiveness can also fit in that bucket, I think, as well. And transportation is clearly an issue.
Operational readiness is already problematic and will become increasingly so as more and more of our frontline adults have to quarantine for extended periods of time because of incidents that happen in school or external to the school. You can't run the show without the people, and more of the people are having to quarantine for extended periods of time, and the whole system falls apart. It was predictable, and we had a good long September and October run. And again, I don't see how November isn't the month where we have to revert to full distance learning. And I will say it over and over again, and I don't have any inside knowledge. I kind of was hoping the governor was planning to make that announcement tomorrow. I don't think we're going to hear it tomorrow, but I have to believe we're going to hear it not that long afterwards. I think we said it on the show we taped earlier this week. When you leave on a Friday, take the stuff you want to make sure you have at home with you, because I'm not sure when the time comes, we're not going to be back the following Monday.
And I think you have to, we've said all along, the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas is going to be the most difficult with flu season coming, and we're almost there.
Yeah.
So in fact, we made it for 2 months. I also think, we see what's going on around the country, but we have to look what's going on around the world too. We can't just isolate ourselves, obviously. And Europe's going into a lockdown again. They had COVID early on, corrected it in many cases. Then the United States got it. Now Europe's back to it. We can see what's happening. So take a lesson from there. And I think, if you look at, and again, I use the sports world, the Boston Marathon has already canceled their 2021 Boston Marathon and moved it to sometime in the fall. So obviously, groups that are looking 6-8 months down the road are already making plans for the winter and spring, and they don't look good. Hopefully, we have a great election on Tuesday, and we get some confidence that things will start to change, but it's not going to change overnight. We're in for a tough 2 or 3 months, if not.
And we're a funny people. I taped Lively Experiment for this weekend, so watch Lively Experiment, and one of the guests who disagrees with me on these issues said, well, Dr. Fauci said we might not get a vaccine until 2022. Do you want to keep the schools closed till 2022? The answer is no, I don't. But I want to do what's right for everybody involved. And we're funny because if this was war, if we were in wartime London when they were raining bombs down upon us all the time, there would be a huge level of solidarity. And the blackout curtains, if you study your history, would be up in every house. And if someone across the street noticed a little bit of light coming from your house, they'd let you know about it. They let you know about it fast. We seem to be afraid to say, wear your mask, do the right thing, quarantine. This is a crisis. This is a wartime type crisis. Probably the only line of Donald Trump's I'd ever agree with when he called it the invisible enemy, because it's an invisible enemy. It's a virus that you cannot see, but it's out there and it's greatly impacting Americans and has killed over 200,000 of us so far, with more to come, very frighteningly. And why we can't realize that there's some level of personal sacrifice that has to go on in time of a national and international crisis like that. Sometimes it gets beyond you. You wonder, how can people not understand this? Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult, but it's better than the alternative of losing more loved ones. And I know of where I speak on that topic. So let's be smart about this. And we said at the very beginning of this in March on the first episode and many times since, health and safety first. And that might require sacrifices. And again, no joy in saying it, but just better than any alternative I can think of.
You keep
Indeed.
people safe and healthy, everything else can follow. I don't want students to lose, a day of their education or the opportunities. And we know that, again, there are some students who we're going to have to really reach out and help if we go to distance learning. But the fact that somebody may not be, may miss 3 months of algebra or 3 months of American history, that can be made up. You get sick and spread COVID, that cannot be undone.
Yeah. So we'll see what the governor has for restrictions and announcements tomorrow. We all don't meet up at this fine space until after the election next week. So let's take 2 seconds to talk about the election, who we think that people should vote for.
Somebody
Because public education is on the ballot, make no mistake. And we need to have someone in the White House who is going to support public education, especially now.
Only you were giving us a hint in the background shot. I've already voted. I think we are going to have a very good day on Tuesday in Rhode Island and across the country. I think that the Democrats and the Independents and the fed up Republicans are going to rally behind Joe Biden. I actually think, and predictions are always dangerous, I think it's going to be a bigger victory than folks realize. Maybe on the popular vote, on the order of 10 million votes. That's a pretty aggressive prediction. I think Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump by at least 10 million votes overall. And I think we're going to win more states than people have expected and come really close in others and set the stage for some good things. And we have a decent chance of taking back the United States Senate. And then the work really starts, because we're going to have to pull together as a country and fix a lot of the damage that's been done. And we're going to have to do it in the middle of a crisis. And I'm ready for it. I hope you all are too.
I am not as optimistic. I just want to make sure that people don't get complacent and think, oh, I don't need to get out there and vote. If you have not already voted, please make your plan and go do and get out there early. If you have your mail ballot, get it in with your feet, walk it into the city hall, or get over to a ballot box, one of the drop boxes, and take care of that business. I have checked yesterday on my ballot, which is accepted. So I felt like I had like a stamp of approval. I was accepted.
Yes, my ballot was accepted yesterday too.
Oh, good.
And you
So
can,
with-
if you voted by mail, you can follow on the Secretary of State's website and watch it through its whole process. And as it gets certified to prove that you are you and your ballot is where it's supposed to be. As over 200,000 Rhode Islanders have already done.
Yes.
Good for us.
Unbelievable. It is good for us.
And if you want to get involved in helping another state, you can go to our website and join in, because NEA is making phone calls into key states, especially Pennsylvania.
The link is on our website, neari.org/2020, and you can find all of our the slate of endorsed candidates there as well. As far as ballot questions, vote yes on one. That was approved by NEARI PAC. And of course, any questions that are on your local, on your ballot that are for public education.
There are 4 school bond issues spread
School
throughout
bond issues.
the state, including Newport, which is one of our communities
Yes.
we represent the teachers. And please vote yes. And whatever community you live in with a school bond on the ballot, please support rebuilding our schools. And you know why now, because you're getting all the reports of how much work the infrastructure in our schools need.
And if you live in Narragansett, vote 3 and 5 for the new library, because it's long overdue.
Indeed. All right, gentlemen, so we'll see you next week after the big day, hopefully with big smiles on all of our faces.
Yes,
All right, thanks.
thanks.